Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me is Yogi Chugh, and we're going to be talking about something good for a change because we're going to be talking about a Soros Omidyar free India. Would that help Modi 3.0? In which way would it help? And also, let's talk a little bit about the 6 Indian American members of Congress in the current Congress and how they are going to be reacting to all the things that are happening. Over to you.
Well, the one thing is clear, the Trump administration has done a big favor to the whole narrative about deep state in talking about the impact of people like the Soros, and then talk about the Tariffs Foundation, talk about the peer Omidyar. And interestingly enough, many of them were beneficiaries of USAID funds.
Of course.
So obviously, I think every one of these organizations is coming back and doing a reset. What happened? 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗪, 𝗟𝗜𝗡𝗏, right? The shock and awe of reassessing where everybody is. When you have a funding short, what happens is that you have things allocated for years. All of a sudden, you know that there's going to be like a tsunami hit and all the activists are going to come back and say, what happened? I've been a firm believer that activists are very good at what they do, but they get hungry too. They have to eat, they have to pay rent. So all of a sudden, activism does come to a halt. And often what ends up happening in this situation is it's a crisis of moment because messaging from the top, the edict hota na jo ki agle 2 mahine yahi bolna hai, right? You get a memo or you get whatever they call it, playbook or whatever they call it, right?
Yeah.
So from that regard, I think there's going to be a fundamental shift of reassessing priorities and what's going to happen. So when this happens, it doesn't only happen with institutions like the Soros and others, it happens with, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, all of the other entities, Greenpeace, anybody who's had their skin in the game in India, right? All of a sudden there's reassessment. What does this mean? How do we deal with this? It's not only one country, it's around the world. How is it going to be treated in Europe? How is it going to be treated in EMEA? So there's a soul search that comes along with it. So all of a sudden, I think the eyes are off activism for a while. It's resetting and reassessing where budgets are. I do think that the attacks on India have been a little unfair. Even our reports have always been grounded in the fact that the United States foreign policy is grounded in human rights. And while we aspire to do better, it is our job to go tell all our democracies in the world that are allies how we can become better at human rights. Well, that's fine, but doesn't mean that you propel some to be louder. And I've always been of the belief that rhetoric gets you nowhere. Rhetoric can be actually counterproductive. I'm a big believer in bringing the brightest and best from India to our Congress and Senate, understanding how democracy works, sending our US people to India's democracy and understanding that how it's different, right? How President Trump can do shock and awe. All he has to rely upon is Speaker Mike Johnson, and then he has to take it to the Senate, and he's got Thun, who has to whip 50 votes. If there's a tie, J.D. Vance can vote on it. Try to do that in a belligerent, loud Indian expression of democracy in our Lok Sabha and our Rajya Sabha, and you begin to understand how Indian government is different. But I do think that this will give India breathing room to do what it has been doing and can do good, which is free of the rhetoric, that aspirationally leave nobody behind, because India does have its income inequality issues just like we do. And I think somebody in India would seize the moment. It's likely to happen post-Modi, but when that seize the moment happens, how do we allow India to flourish as a democracy? I don't think Soros or Tide or any foundation should have a say in the form that India's democracy should evolve. I think the people of India, I left India 39 years ago. Who am I to preach to India? I can give some suggestions, some observations, but who am I to come back and put 100 people in New Delhi who are going to come back and write articles in newspapers to come back and talk about that we're less secular than where we were before? No, I think India is secular. There are challenges, but it's a 75-year-old experiment in democracy that is poised to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. They did it without us. They'll define a little bit of allyship from the United States. we should stay out. We should talk about our aspirational goals about what we want India to be for the next 100 years. And I think there are smart people in India who are recognizing that government's now becoming a meritocracy. I'm very optimistic about America's future. I'm also very optimistic about the role of India in the world. Third largest economy, a democracy, English speaking, half the population under the age of 30, 40. Can you imagine the burgeoning power?
Yeah.
Can you imagine when India becomes a manufacturing powerhouse? Can you imagine when Gift City becomes the largest money center of the world, equal to New York and equal to London and Hong Kong? It's just a matter of time. Who are we to preach to them that what you're doing is not right? And even if one makes the argument that India's economy is going to rise at a certain percentage no matter what you do because GDP is an outcome of growth in people and purchasing. No, I basically disagree with that. It's policy. It's policy that drives, and that's where India today is on ease of business, venture community. There's always a Silicon Valley idea about India needs to do more, right? Even this idea of tariffs, right? I don't think anybody can come back and say that tariffs aren't good if they're on both sides. We still got to protect our farmers in India. We still got to protect our ability to build things for markets. We still need to become the pharmacy manufacturer of the world, right? We still need to become the 𝗤𝗏𝗏 manufacturer of the world, right? We still have to become self-dependent upon our own semiconductors. We have to be self-dependent upon our critical minerals and rare earths. We have to generate oil. We have to generate our roads, which are doing extremely well. We have to make indigenous cars. We have to make electric vehicles, electric scooters. We have to make our service delivery model such that it creates opportunities for the poorest of the poor. You know, I get passionate about this, but you know, when I look at India's success, my dad, 91 years old, he says, "Beta, India बहुत advanced हो गया." Like, Dad, in the conversation that I have in Capitol Hill, people don't see it that way. He says, जो साइकिल चलाता था वो मोपेड चलाता है, जो मोपेड चलाता था वो मोटरसाइकिल चलाता है, जो मोटरसाइकिल चलाता था वो गाड़ी चलाता है, जो गाड़ी चलाता है वो अब, you know, probably buys an SUV. So that just begins to show how our society is moving. But on the other hand, I'm still not going to undermine the fact that there are still the poorest of the poor who have not been uplifted and they've been left behind. The challenge will be who in India, post-Modi, has this ability to rise to the moment and to come back and be that inspiring voice to believe in the success of India, which is very proud of its roots, its faith, that, you know, it's a Hindu nation in which all minorities continue to survive and everybody should feel proud of what it's accomplished. It's the economy, it's the economy, it's the economy. You take care of them, India's success in the world is going to become even much more stronger. And press needs to become stronger. That's what I would advise all our politicians. Nurture the press.
So, moving on to this question about our 6 illustrious Indian Americans.
Yeah.
I know 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with them. The others, I'm not so sure. I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I've also heard not so good things. So, your take on how they are going to be playing a role, because they are the bridge that can make this thing happen.
The US-India partnership or the voice of the Indian American community in the US?
Yes.
I think that we have 6 members of Congress, right? We have 𝗓𝗏𝗏 𝗍𝗑𝗏.
Oh, we can go by individuals.
No, we'll go as a collective group because it could be very difficult to speak about all of them. But 𝗓𝗏𝗏 𝗍𝗑𝗏, Omidyar, then we have
Sree
𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏, Raja Krishnamurthy.
Yeah.
And then Suhas Subramaniam, who just recently got elected and came on to the 6th member of Congress.
And Ro Khanna, of course.
And Ro Khanna, obviously. I think the 6 of them have found their own bearings. 𝗓𝗏𝗏 has become a progressive voice and strong on immigration because she came through the ranks in Seattle being an immigrant advocate, right? So her passion is progressive issues and that. So you're going to see that she is going to lead the progressive voice in Congress against Trump's issues on immigration. No doubt about that. Illegal deportations and all of that. Ami has always been a physician, but you know, he's found his own niche. He's been less vocal for a number of reasons, and we can talk about that one other day. Raja has certainly done well in being a voice. Just yesterday at the prayer breakfast that Trump attended. Raja recited the Gayatri Mantra, so that was huge. And then Ro obviously has carved his own place in American politics. And then Sree Iyer is just beginning to find his bearings. He survived his first re-election. I've always told him, be careful of the next one, because the opponent who was supposed to run against you got kicked out on a technicality for less signatures. Next time around, they'll probably try to do it, and just be careful. But I think they have a very difficult role in this Congress. They have to be seen as a resistance to pander to their own bases. But I think where they can show leadership, all of them, and that's reflective of our community, right? We're Democrats on values, but when it comes to economic policy, I think we lean Republican sometimes. That they need to come back and call out that there is waste, let's get rid of the waste. But once we find the extra money, we need to bring the deficit down. We're on a cliff. And then we need to figure out our spending, and our spending has to be with one goal. It has to be simple solutions to complex problems. We cannot make this our vanity and our pet project Congress. And they will continue to be a strong voice for the US-India partnership. I think you're beginning to recognize that being Hindu is now getting normalized a little bit, right? When Vivek ran, his Hindu faith came along. He's now still considered somebody that Trump likes. And he's going to run for governor of Ohio as a Hindu. 𝗠𝗢𝗙 𝗢𝗏𝗏. She's making progress. She's likely going to become the first director of the DNI.
Yeah.
She's a Hindu. Ro is a Hindu. Raja is a Hindu. Suhas is a Hindu. Others, it's never been clear. But the opportunity now to be proud of your faith is easier under a Trump administration. Because I think normalizing of your faith, and during H1, the worst of the worst brought it to the forefront. But in the end, the largest institutions of this country stood up for the fact that while you can attack H1Bs, you cannot attack people on their faith. Vivek and Trump stood by Elon. So the Hindu faith is getting normalized in this country. So if any member of Congress, these six, were to come back to me and tell me, oh, it's very difficult for me to talk about Hindu-American issues, I'll say you better start talking about Hindu-American issues, because the president is talking about Hindu-American issues, so you have nothing to worry about. Right is right. People will appreciate your conviction. Where I've always told them is don't straddle, don't pander. If you believe something, be okay. If you have issues with nationalism, it's okay. Say I have a problem with nationalism, but be strong enough to defend your faith. I'm okay if you don't take an oath on the Bhagavad Gita, but I want you to come back and stand for the fact that it's okay to come back and say our temples are getting attacked. It's okay to come back and say that our Hindu faith is under attack by forces in America. There's nothing wrong in that. Because there is. You cannot deny it. We've seen it. You can sugarcoat it and say it doesn't exist, but it exists. What's wrong in calling it out? Nobody's going to fault you for defending your faith if it's legitimate. Now, if you're simply going to come back and do it just because you want to curry favor with your donors and you want to say something so they'll write you checks, I would say, you know what? That's hypocrisy. Do it because you care. In America, you have to stand for something, Sree. If you stand for something, people will respect you. Trump, we call him that, oh my God, this man is nuts sometimes. But you can never, ever come back and say that he is unconventional, he's not politically correct, he does not care to make people happy, he just wants to get to the chase, and he's an impatient man. His political strategy aside, he's got 3+ in the Congress, he's got a majority in the Senate, and he's got it in the general election, which is going to come in the midterms in 2 years. We're going to find out what happens. But long-worded purpose of this is, you got to stand for something. If you can't stand for something, I don't buy the argument that public service is supposed to do good, because in the absence of that, what you're saying is public service can do good as long as it doesn't hurt me with everybody else. I don't buy that school of thought. Show me a fight, show me that you got what it takes. I'm telling you, people will come back and rally behind you and say, you know what, I admire this guy, I understand the sensitivities of his district, but at the end of the day, man, he is just rock solid. That counts for something in American politics. I've been disappointed a lot by some of these members of Congress, but as I talk to them, I tell them, don't be afraid. If you need cover, politics mein kai baar, you should get a press briefing, ki press conference mein kya bologe. It's okay, think about it for a moment, but never apologize for standing up for what you think is right.
Very true, very true, very true. Thank you so much, Yogi. And viewers, we would be back again with more conversations with Yogi. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and put in a word on what you thought of this series of talks. We would love to hear from you. Thanks once again, Yogi.
Thank
Namaskar.
You. Namaskar.